Now. Hello and welcome to CybHER Podcast on YouTube. I am Abigail and I'm here with Nadine Michaelides. Is that correct?
Michaelides, close.
Michaelides. She is a cyber psychologist and a behavioral scientist, a researcher, and she is a really cool person that I get to interview today. So, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You're really busy and a little bit stressed, trying to wrap things up with work as well as all the other stuff in personal life coming up to Christmas. But otherwise, I'm good. How are you?
Good, great. All right. Do you have anything you want to discuss first before we jump into the questions?
No, continue as you like.
Sweet. So I found on your LinkedIn profile that you mentioned you're a cyber psychologist. What is cyber psychology?
Well, essentially, psychology is the study of the mind and behavior. The cyber part just puts it in the context of cybersecurity. So trying to look at employees or anyone in relation to cybersecurity, the human being, the human mind, and looking at their behavior.
Awesome. That is so cool. When I read that, I thought that was just interesting, an interesting side of the technology and the brain combining together. And it's just interesting point of view. Mm-hmm. So Anima is a company that you founded. Anima specializes in helping companies who are going through changes, either through merger or implementation of new digital systems that are going to force people to change how they work. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, basically, we support companies to look deeply into their workforce and the processes that sit behind their operations, all around people. So imagine a people consultancy, but specializing in behavior change, specifically around technology and cybersecurity. So when you have a new implementation of a technology product, for example, like cybersecurity, then there's a behavior change that's required in order to be able to use it to its best effectiveness. I manage that stakeholder engagement to ensure that the money that's being spent on the technology has maximum impact.
How did you come about founding Anima?
Well, essentially, before that, I had, for many, many years, I've had a communications consultancy. And that basically looked into not specifically cybersecurity, but the wider technology, digital implementations and the people behavior change around that. So really, cybersecurity is just one part of that. It's a similar problem with more complexity and more dramatic consequences if things go wrong. So I was used to dealing with people and trying to manage change and influence them to embrace change more specifically. But this was sort of a development into a need due to the current environment and the current threats that people and companies are facing. I also had what was called a relocations and global mobility company that I started, which was to do with the physical change that people experience. That's obviously when they relocate to usually abroad, then that adds a lot of complexity to people's lives and people respond in different ways to that change. So that was a different type of company. But essentially all of it, the theme that runs throughout these companies is the change, the behavior change and the stakeholder engagement piece around technology and change.
I see you have a degree in psychology, a degree in investigative journalism, and a degree in globalization and human rights. Would you say that your degree in psychology has helped you when you founded Anima?
Yeah, I would say that it helped me to think strategically. It gave me the groundings in terms of research methods and how to think scientifically and use a methodology to solve problems, which is essentially what a business is trying to do usually, or arguably it should be there to solve a problem or provide a solution to a need. And so, I mean, psychology is a wonderful way of understanding the complexity of life and people, which is also apparent in business. Business is a very complex thing to manage. Often you're involved in multiple things that you don't expect to be involved in, and it's a juggling act. So psychology was a brilliant foundation for that.
Okay, so you had investigative journalism and globalization human rights. Can you tell us about those 2 degrees and what was your inspiration behind requiring those degrees?
Sure. So I did my master's in investigative journalism quite late in life. It was, if you like, it could be called a second career. I was 37. And it really was off the back of my second business, which wasn't doing extremely well in terms of profitability. I was working a lot of hours and not really getting much in return. I'd actually started that, this was the relocations business. I'd started it with my father who died and was left trying to sort of manage it myself for a while. And when he died, I decided that I wanted to kind of sit back and just reevaluate what I was going to do next, rather than throw myself into something completely new all over again. And that master's in investigative journalism was a good way to give myself a year to just kind of figure out what I was going to do next. The reason it was investigative journalism was because, funnily enough, actually, when I was 18, my first choice at university had actually been broadcast journalism at a university in Southern England, and I didn't get onto the course, and I was heartbroken. I was so disappointed. And then I went on to do psychology. So it was one of those things that was in the back of my mind, thinking, God, what would it have been like if I'd been this broadcast journalist? Wouldn't it have been so cool? And obviously, being in communications for the majority of my career, about 15 years by this stage, it was related to the career in which I was in, but slightly more getting to grips with the investigative side. So learning new tools, how to code, how to scrape websites, all sorts of really key new skills that I didn't have. So there were multiple reasons why I went out and did that master's in investigative journalism. And actually it opened a door that I wasn't expecting at all. So, and it opened the door to cybersecurity, which I may have fell upon anyway because of my change management piece around technology. But I was thrown in as part of this investigative journalism degree because of an investigation around cybersecurity. And that's when I really got my teeth into cybersecurity and fell in love with the idea of trying to solve such a human-centered related problem. The globalization and human rights, again, that's to do with human rights. It's protecting human beings from harm. So that's specifically, I was looking a lot at corporate social responsibility in organizations, which is something that we need, generally speaking, in order to protect employees. And is also very relevant to cybersecurity. Essentially, we need to protect them from harm and protect their rights in the same way.
You are currently enrolled in a PhD program with the University of Warwick in Cyber Psychology. How will this degree help your career?
Well, essentially, it will enlarge my network, and already has done. And it's given me the clout so that when I speak to people, hopefully they will listen a bit more than they did before. I think people are much more impressed with speaking to someone with the doctor behind their name than before. So there is this sort of status element of it, of course, but essentially for me, the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm really interested in this very niche area of research, and I wanted to collaborate with other people who are also interested in this, thereby creating this network, and so that I could commit to doing it as part of my life, as part of my career. The other thing that doing a PhD gives you is it gives you some key research skills. It really advances them and develops them to a point where you really are an expert in research, and it enables you to look deeply into the situation or a current problem and really sort of strategically, methodologically look at how you can address that and understand it, and then provide the appropriate solution.
How do you like going back to school? Not many people go back to school later on in life. So how are you like?
Well, I have to say the investigative journalism, whilst it was absolutely brilliant and it really broadened my life and taught me a few lessons, it was tough because a lot of my colleagues, in fact all of them, were much younger than me, oozed confidence, perhaps not with the experience or professionalism of understanding that there are multiple, everyone can be an expert of something. So there was some key sort of, it was difficult in that way, but I really have enjoyed it. It's given me, it's allowed me to focus again, whereas before I was a little bit unsure about which direction I should be going on. I was randomly, I was trying to sort of, as I said, with the global communications and the relocations company, I was trying to figure out what direction I should go in. And that really helped me to really focus on what direction I wanted to be in. So I think for me, it's been really great. And particularly through this COVID, this pandemic, it's provided a framework, it's provided structure to my day, it's given me deadlines. When you have your own business, one of the most difficult things is that you have no boss telling you that, okay, you need to do this by this date. You have to be proactive and motivate yourself all day, every day. And I would say I am a very proactive and I am a very self-motivated person, but everyone has crappy days, right? Everyone has days when they're feeling a bit lazy or they're not quite focused, and you just need someone to just kind of pick you up or push you along, or to just sort of at least have a chat with. Well, academia gives you that ability to connect with other people, so you don't feel like you're doing it all on your own.
What inspired you to take this education path?
I think for me, I recognize that personally, I can only go so far on my own. And I could go and look for a partner in crime, and I have looked, but I've not able to find someone that really fills the gaps that I have. Not saying I won't, I'm sure I will. So for me, going to education opens the door to a network. It gets you to meet people that you might not otherwise, people that are really passionate about their job. It opens up events that you can go to, and it keeps you up to date in your field, which is really, really critical. It's so easy when you're stuck in a job to just kind of not know what's going on, and to lose sight of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think having one foot in academia and one foot in industry, as they say, or private, public sector, whatever it might be, keeps you fresh. And it keeps you at the forefront of trying to solve that problem, whatever it might be.
So you speak 4 languages. You speak Swedish, English, French, and Spanish. That's awesome. That's amazing. Has being able to speak different languages helped you in your career?
Well, I speak these languages to varying degrees, I should say. I'm fluent in English and I'm fluent in Swedish because of my heritage. The French and the Spanish, I'm at advanced level because that's what I did in Britain with A levels. So, I would say, when I chose my A levels when I was 18, at that point you chose 3. Some people chose 4, but usually 3. And I chose French, Spanish, and English literature. So that was really kind of limiting my choices in a way. But I felt at that point in the 90s that having languages was such a powerful leverage on your CV, something that was a USP, something that employers would really appreciate. But I would say that it's not so much been something that is at the forefront of my CV and something that employers have snapped me up over, or likewise as a business owner that has given me, has been the main reason why people want to buy my service. But it's there as it's a helpful, supportive tool that enables you to communicate with people that others might not. And the other thing that it does is it actually broadens your mind. Learning languages, the youngest you do it, the better, allows all these synaptic potentials and little things in your brain to connect in ways that it wouldn't otherwise, which helps not just in terms of learning languages, but actually being able to juggle projects, which is really, really important in most jobs these days, to learn new skills. One of the toughest things you can do is learn a new language. So if you crack that, you can pretty much crack anything.
That is amazing advice. You are a founder, a speaker, and a researcher. What does your typical day look like?
Well, one of the things I love about my work is every day looks completely different. The only thing that's the same is obviously at the moment, most of us are at home and we're staring at PCs waiting for things to happen. But in terms of the structure of my day and the tasks that I'm doing, it can be very different from one day to the next. So last week I was writing reports, so that was a lot of sitting at my desk and going through content, creating content, checking content, liaising with my colleagues to see whether it was the right sort of thing they wanted, and then setting it off and delivering a presentation. You asked me the week before, I was out there speaking to people all around the world, interviewing them about some key questions that I had around psychology and cybersecurity, really looking for insight into how to solve a problem. So that was very different. That was all video interviews, that was all talking. And then if you'd asked me a couple of weeks before that, it was all coding, it was all qualitative data. And then next week will be completely different. So I would say there isn't really a standard day. Particularly in my work, because I'm juggling multiple projects, some as part of universities that I'm doing, others that are more private and to do with my business. So really interesting. I also work as a journalist for Cybersecurity magazine. So that's me writing articles, which I do. Generally speaking, I try and do at least one a month. And then we have podcasts like this, where I get an opportunity to share my experiences with people like themselves.
You've mentioned COVID a couple of times in keeping motivated for yourself and your job and everything like that. How does COVID impact your work?
Well, it's, obviously no one can say it's been a good thing. It's been quite a bad thing for most people around the world. But there's been some, in my opinion, some key learnings, or it's perhaps initiated some progress that it may not have done otherwise. For example, I am able to juggle far more projects than I would have done previously, because I'm not spending my time traveling, for one thing. I have the flexibility to plan my own workload and make sure that I can do a really great job of each of these projects. But previously, I wouldn't have been able to do half of them because I would have been in and out of a plane. I would have been from meeting to meeting. So for me, COVID has been a really great thing in terms of being able to communicate and connect with people all around the world, and maximize my efficiency, and reach out to lots of people and get involved in lots of different projects.
Does being a behavioral scientist help you in your everyday job?
Absolutely. I mean, my everyday job is purely behavioral science, other than when I'm writing articles, but then I'm writing about behavioral science. So it's behavioral science is such a powerful tool. It's not just knowledge and theory. It's a tool that you can use for everything in life. So, I mean, I'm much more of a socio-technical, I'm more of a social science type of personality and person. So when I see a problem, I approach it from a behavioral science perspective, and would do whether or not I have done a degree in it. What the degree does is it allows you to communicate your what is it you plan to do and how do you plan to do it and execute it in an effective way.
You are currently working with 2 different universities on 2 different research projects. Do you like research?
Yes, I'm actually working for 3 now, but yes, I very much do like research. I often I think people get pigeonholed either through choice, that their own personal choice, or through others, into whether they are quantitative or qualitative researchers. Now, with the nature of computer science and cybersecurity being a lot about numbers and data, quantitative data, naturally there's a tendency to veer towards the quantitative in this line of work. I would say I take on a mixed methods approach, perhaps because I've been what's called a practitioner. I've been out in the world, in the industry, in companies, trying to solve problems. So I don't go too deeply into the quantitative, and I don't go too deeply into the qualitative. And I keep the problem as core as my research. So if I think that that problem requires 2 different approaches, then that's what I will do. If I think that that problem requires, rather than just putting metrics to it and doing some quantitative analysis, it requires more of an in-depth look at the context or the deeper feelings and perceptions of people and individuals, then I will do more of a qualitative approach. So for me, that's fantastic in the sense of I can juggle. I love juggling. I've always had to juggle. I've got 3 kids. By nature, you learn how to juggle. So it allows me to look at the solution, try and understand what it is, and try and apply the correct methodology.
What is your favorite part about your job?
Well, I think it's talking to people, right? I mean, everything I do is all about people. It always has been. So really talking to people and feeling like I'm helping them in some way. That probably sounds quite sort of, no longer do we talk about, certainly in the UK, about saving the world or making peace or anything like that. But I'm quite a moralistic person. And for me, the most value that I get through my work is by trying to improve situations and environments for people.
What has been the most exciting part of your career so far?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. The most exciting part of my career. Talking to you, of course. Yeah, no, I mean, it's good fun being on these podcasts. because again, you're getting an opportunity to communicate with people, with a network, with an audience that you wouldn't normally. So actually doing podcasts like this are great fun. And I also enjoy writing articles for magazines and newspapers, giving my point of view.
What is the most boring part of your job? Is there even such a thing for a cyber psychologist?
Oh, definitely. Well, I would say numerous things. Currently editing a presentation, which, you always hope that you can always get away from it at some point, perhaps if you're a CEO or something, but absolutely not. You always end up having to do presentations. So that's a job that I don't particularly enjoy much. But, you recognize there's always boring parts of the job. I think the key thing is to try and figure out what tasks you enjoy and what tasks you find really boring, and choose a career that focuses more, veers a little bit more towards the things you enjoy rather than things that you find boring.
Okay, so our last question, what would be your leaving advice for CybHER?
My leaving advice for cyber?
For CybHER.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say don't be afraid of the fact that you might come from a social science discipline, or you might come from history or English literature. It doesn't matter where you come from. It matters what you can offer to the problem. Your point of view is valuable and your skills are valuable. The problem happens is trying to figure out how you can give that offering within the current job market that is out there, within the job titles that you might be searching for. So that takes a little bit more understanding of looking into each of the job roles in cybersecurity. What do they mean and what do they involve? And there's a lot of development that is happening, but it takes time. But I would say if you're interested in cybersecurity, step into it and shout out from the rooftops and do what you can. And if there isn't a job, create a job.
I love that. If there isn't a job, create a job. Well, thank you so much, Nadine. I was so excited for this podcast and getting to get to know you a little better. And if there's anything on, go check out our other podcasts on YouTube. And I'm pretty sure that's it.
Great. Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I hope it's useful to someone out there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.